Hi, I'm Father Jim Forson, and I'd like to share with you some reflections on the Gospel of the third Sunday in Ordinary Time. Several years ago, I worked in South Central Los Angeles, and they have a practice in that part of town that I had when I was a kid growing up that I had forgotten all about, and that is the Good Humor ice cream truck. I don't know about you growing up, but when we were kids, the ice cream truck would drive up and down the streets with that happy little tune it would play. And when you heard that tune as kids, oh my God, we would just run out into the street to stop the truck. And we would beg Mom for quarters so we could buy an ice cream. And those we just lived for those moments. We loved them. And so when I was sent to work in the South Central and I heard the ice cream truck, I was amazed that that tradition was still continuing on. And kids were still doing the exact same thing. They were getting money from their parents and running out into the street and stopping the truck and buying ice cream and so on. So there was one day when the kindergarten children were graduating, and they had a separate graduation altogether for the kindergarten kids. And they had the little gowns on and their hats, and the way the ceremony went is the child would walk out in the church and stand in front of the altar and receive their diploma, and they would turn to the congregation and tell the entire congregation what they were going to be when they grew up. And so they read the little diploma, and one child would say they wanted to be a teacher, and somebody else would say they wanted to be a doctor and things like that. But this one little guy, he gets his diploma and he turns it with this big smile on his face. He says, "I'm going to be an ice cream truck driver." And we all burst out laughing because, what higher aspiration is there in life than bringing ice cream to children? But, that question of what you want to be when you get older, what do you want to do with your life? We think of that as something that is with young adults growing up, going off to college. What are you going to study toward? What is it that you want to do with your life and become? And it can sometimes be so uncertain. And especially now, the average person growing up now in their late teens, early 20s will go through about 5 to 7 different careers. So what is it you want to do with your life? That could be a pretty big question. But it's not a question that's just confined to youth. That's a question for everyone. And today in the gospel, Jesus answers it for himself and his people. We see that Jesus goes back home to Nazareth. And in Nazareth, he does what he has always done, and that is he goes to temple, which means that he's in this small little synagogue, small temple in Nazareth, a town of maybe 60 to 90 people, which means that he knows everybody in that synagogue, and everybody in that synagogue knows him. And they hand him the scroll to read from. And obviously they know him well, and they know that he can read. And so he selects this passage from Isaiah, and he reads that. And it reads that I am here to bring good news to the poor, liberty to captives. I'm here to be able to lift up the downtrodden. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm going to do with my life. And he sits down and people are stunned because, you're the carpenter's kid. What are you talking about? That's the work that a Messiah does. Right. And all eyes, as it says in the scripture passage, all eyes are fixed on him. They don't know what to make of him. But he does. He knows what he's about. He knows what he wants to do with his life. And what he's going to do with his life is lift up the lowly. What he's going to do with his life is bring God to people, especially the poorest of people. Well, that question of what is it that you want to do with your life isn't one, as I said before, that's just confined to the young. That's a question that follows us all through our lives. we get married and we have kids. Now, what is it you're going to do with your life? And maybe the kids grow up and they leave the house and it's an empty nest now. And now what do I do with my life? Or someone dies. I remember when my dad died. My mom was about 60 years of age, and she told me that was the very first time in her life she ever lived by herself and didn't know what she was going to be doing with her life. And I'm retired now, and when I retired, people asked me, and they still do, what do you do in retirement? And to be honest with them, when I first started, I didn't know. I don't know what I was supposed to be doing. What am I going to make of my life? And there's that quote that I've said before by Mary Oliver, whom I love, and I've told you before, and I'll probably tell you again. She asks that question, tell me, what is it that you want to do with your one wild and precious life? So, what is it we want to do with our wild and precious life? Well, I tell you, these days, a lot of people in Los Angeles are hurting. And we've gone through that terrible fire and the terrible aftermath of the fire. And we don't know how it's all going to shake out. It's going to take years. And people that I've met are so tired, they're emotionally exhausted, and people's nerves are on edge, and there's a lot of accusations, and all of that is in the air, and it's going to stay there for quite a while. And what is it that I want to do? I want to do what Jesus did. What do I want to do with my retirement? I want to bring comfort to people, especially to the poor, especially to the downtrodden. That's what I want to do with my one wild and precious life, to bring mercy to people. But that's what I want to do. That's my life, not yours. So, tell me, what is it that you want to do with your one wild and precious life?